Welcome or welcome back to On This Date. And today I want to hop on here and discuss a little bit of week one of the retrial of Karen Reed and just what kind of I took from the trial. And I'm going to refer back to my phone with some notes. That way I can kind of go through what I thought as I watched the trial and notes that I jotted down. Um, into my phone. That way it makes it a little bit easier for me to go through and kind of label what I felt important about the case, um, and see what you guys felt as well with what I'm saying and bringing in this video and what you interpret and see in the case as you watch it. So I guess let's go ahead and we'll get started into the opening statements. So I did a little video prior to this one stating that I did see some of the, I did watch the opening statements. I didn't get to watch a whole bunch of the trial that day because I had other things going on. However, I did watch the opening statements um, all the way through. And I did go back and watch the trial to kind of see if I missed anything. A lot of it's things that we already know from the first trial, the one that ended with a hung jury. And that's why we are now here with Karen yet again. So, to me, I guess let's talk about the opening statements, right? I think that the prosecution came out a little bit weak, a lot of it weak. Um, I don't really know what the goal was to that opening statement, but I'm sure there's something, right? It's strategy, and I'm sure that he had a reason for why he introduced what he did during the opening statements. I feel like Karen Reed's attorney, Alan Jackson, came out swinging. He came out ready to win. He, to me, dominated the two of them for sure. Um, I feel like Alan Jackson really stressed in the beginning that this case was mishandled. And by that, he was referring to the trooper Michael Proctor, who was involved in the first trial of Karen Reed and who was head of the investigation at that time. Um, he really stresses about Michael Proctor's mishandling and just uh, what's even the word, misconduct in the trial. So Michael Proctor was fired, and Alan Jackson wants you to know about that situation and that he was let go from the Massachusetts State Police. So, Boston Police. So that's something that he really wants to drive home early, which saying like, well, if Michael Proctor was fired for mishandling and misconduct of this case, then why should we trust anything brought forward now, considering that the whole argument in the case was built off of someone who was essentially fired for the mishandling of this case? And I agree. Definitely, those are questions that should be answered, and hopefully, those are questions that the jury can understand, are important ones. Like, why are we here? If everything that they're bringing forward was um, found or was evidence submitted by Michael Proctor, how can we trust anything that the state says here on out? So that was very important. And I feel like that really put some reasonable doubt into the jury's minds, which is good. Um, that is the goal of the defense, right? Is to find her, they want her to be found not guilty. And with that is putting the reasonable doubt um, in there to help with their verdict. So, something new that came to light during this opening statements was about the cell phone temperature. And this was the prosecution stating that the phone was at a certain temperature and was never raised back up, indicating that John could have never went into the Alberts family home that night. And if you aren't familiar with the first trial, um, there's speculation that John, obviously, Karen's defense is that she did not run John over, and something happened to John inside that home on that night. So, what they're trying to say is the defense is that John entered that home and then was attacked by the dog or was beaten up by members in that house, and then it was covered up, and John's body was then thrown out into the cold weather. So, the prosecution, they want to use that cell phone temperature as evidence that at the point where John got out of Karen's car and the phone drops to, I believe, I'm reading here just through the notes I have, um, the phone was at 77 degrees. And then within a certain time, it had dropped to 70, to 60, and even to 50 at some points. So as soon as he got out of the vehicle, this temperature drop in this phone, accompanied with the Apple iPhone data and also Karen's cell phone records and other things they hope will bring all kind of together this picture that John did not enter the home and something happened that night when Karen was outside of the house with John. So we also had Carrie Roberts, which bombshell. Um, she now says that the testimony she had given before in the previous trial and the grand jury testimony that refers to the Jen McCabe Google hypothermia search. And this was a search that was done on Jen McCabe's phone at 2:30, I believe, in the morning. Now, John's body was not found by Karen, Jen McCabe, and Carrie Roberts until 5 to 5:30 that morning. So what Carrie Roberts stated in the first trial was that she heard Karen ask Jen to Google about hypothermia or something as to, how long does it take to die in the cold? And what that shows for the defense is that that can't be true because Jen McCabe obviously Googled this at 2:30 in the morning. And now Carrie Roberts is saying she heard Karen asking Carrie to Google this, which that just can't be true, right? Because the search was done long before John's body was ever discovered by the three of the women. So now Carrie is saying that she never heard this, that she never heard Karen saying anything about a Google search to Carrie, and they must have, or she must have misspoken, or they misunderstood, or she misunderstood. Mind you, this is perjury. I mean, she lied on the stand. And I don't know, to me, if the truth is the truth and you're telling the truth, you would just tell the truth. The story wouldn't change, this far down the line. Same thing with, we'll get into, let me just refer back to these notes. So kind of that whole memory thing. Oh, I forgot, and now years later I remember, whatever the situation may be. Also, first responder Timothy Nuttall um, was on the stand, and while Alan Jackson questioned him, his memory and recollection just all of a sudden got better over time, and that was a direct quote from him. So this is reference to Timothy being at the scene that day and stating that Karen said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. And in previous testimony, he had stated that he only heard her say this twice, and now he's saying that he heard this 3 times. And a lot of this, Alan Jackson is trying to break down as you didn't hear any of this. Basically saying that at a point when he met with another first responder, I'm trying to think who he met with, and or Trooper Proctor, and they discussed this case. these things weren't discussed according to Timothy, but according to others, it was. Um, Timothy is also questioned about surveillance footage. I'm sorry, dash cam footage that is capturing the scene as he arrives. He finds John and Karen and the three women, and everybody's kind of frantic trying to figure out what is going on. And when he says that he hears Karen state this, there's nothing in the dash cam that picks this up. We don't hear it. Um, and again, the witnesses, it seems to be like they heard it sometimes and they didn't hear it other times. And my opinion with Timothy is that the statement he didn't hear it, or I mean, I'm sorry, that he didn't remember it until now, and that with time it has refreshed his memory. Yeah, I guess. Um, I feel like that's kind of a stretch because being in the career field he's in, you see so many patients. And not to say that obviously the John O'Keefe one has now became extremely scrutinized over social media and very much in the public eye. Um, you think you would just remember the story, like for instance, on what John was wearing. At first, he states that he had a puffy jacket on and these were suitable clothing items for the weather conditions. Then later, he states that that John did not have one on and that he was just in a shirt. So there's many things that are just very odd. And to me, at minimum, we can just say that Timothy doesn't have the best recollection of the events of that night. He'll say that he wasn't worried about this or that because he was too busy trying to tend to John. But then, yet, he'll remember Karen Reed stating she hit him, she hit him, she hit him. And kind of in the same token, say that he wasn't really paying attention to the noise going around. But then, of course, he heard Karen. Um, I just feel like a lot of their memories, and again, this is my opinion, have now all of a sudden led towards more of Karen being the one after they've all kind of gathered together and created timelines and stories and compared and contrasted and whatever all that they did that night and following to the trial. Um, I don't know. I feel like, is it that or is something, a narrative being pushed? And now you want that narrative to be heard and seen by the jury because the narratives before didn't work. I mean, I don't know. Again, I'm not an attorney. I don't have a degree. I'm just sitting here kind of trying to make sense of what information myself, all of us are being given, right? Um, so yeah, the testimony with Timothy was definitely interesting, and it was definitely interesting then when Attorney Hank Brennan for the prosecution of the Commonwealth stood up to re cross examine. I'm trying to butcher the word there. Um, he questioned him and he showed him surveillance footage and basically trying to make it seem like the time frame and the times everything was being played to benefit Karen and that this was the real footage now that he was going to show the jury because Timothy's testimony is being um, placed under question because he states that he heard Karen say this while another first responder was tending to John, and then his story has changed. So, of course, um, the prosecution wants people to believe that his statement and his testimony is true. And by doing that, the prosecutor, Hank Brennan, kind of says, when you came in and we interviewed you and we spoke, what did we tell you? It was to tell the truth. And right, that's what we told you. And it's like further reassuring, like, right, stick to the story, stick to, we're all about the truth here. And you know, I just think it's kind of funny. It's not funny, but I mean, it's just ironic that, we want to tell the truth, but yet we have Boston police um, officers talking back and forth on text and saying, "Oh, he's a Boston PD. Nothing's going to happen to him." Like it's this one big cover up and secretive brotherhood going on inside of this police department. So I don't know. To me, it kind of gave controlling. So yeah, and also I want to touch on really quick before we get away from the Carrie Roberts um, testimony this go around. Carrie's always rubbed me as off. I don't know what it is. And again, this is my opinion and this is just me thinking, but her demeanor towards Karen and her relationship with John and the very dismissiveness, even though Karen was a pivotal role and very important support system to John's niece and nephew, which Carrie was the neighbor and helped and was very close with John as well. I almost just get a jealous or don't like her feeling about Carrie towards Karen. And again, this could just be me reading this different or reading it, how I'm just interpreting it. I just thought that, excuse me, I just thought that her testimony kind of came off bitchy. And again, if she's leaning towards the side that Karen murdered her good friend, I mean, I guess I just felt like Carrie would be on that side anyways, even if Karen is proven innocent. I still feel like Carrie will never waver from what she feels, and that's fine, and that's Carrie's right and her choice, and absolutely. It's a really hard case to talk about these things, right? Because a lot of these people that are testimony or that are testifying are victims themselves. Carrie Roberts was a longtime friend of John and really became close to him and his niece and his nephew and was a intricate part of his everyday life. Um, she's a victim and people lost someone they love. They don't really have any answers and they're going off of speculation and what they believe without really knowing or understanding, but then being swayed by a police department, which, how do I say this without like being from, I think, the certain social status as well. And this is not a take offense or a dig at anything. I think being in a position where you've never experienced law enforcement, but only for the positive, which is great. I think that's really hard for you to turn on law enforcement essentially, right? Because John was a Boston police officer. So I think that we want to believe the good of the police department for sure. And it's easy to think that someone who's a little bit different than you, like Karen, who's a little bit more boisterous, or as Carrie puts it on stand, crazy, because she was saying when Karen was trying to kick open the door, she then said to Jen McCabe, she's crazy. And it's like she couldn't find her boyfriend. It's snowing out and she's in a panic. Like, I don't know. Again, that's why I go back to she's kind of like throwing digs, but I feel like Karen was a little bit not out of their class, but of their clique, okay? Because Karen is she's a financial analyst. She has her own home. She's her own boss, right? Um, that kind of stuff, Karen measures up and then some compared to um, this group of people, I should say. But I feel like Karen's a little bit more real and a little bit less in the environment of wanting to people please and appearances look a certain way. Obviously, she has taken on a whole police department and then some. So I just think that that plays a lot into it. There was, in the past trial, the first trial, talks about when Karen went on vacation with John and his friends, and how Karen was just kind of like left out and made to feel awkward, which it's just another situation in itself with their relationship. So, and I don't want to speak on that too much because John is gone, and I don't know. Yes, the context of the relationship is important, but I don't want to speak too much on the text messages. I find the text messages more of a prosecution problem than I do a defense problem. I'll leave it at that. So, again, I don't think anything crazy. I think just typical things people deal with in a relationship. Um, but for sure, I feel like they are not helping the prosecution. So that's where, oh, so also during this trial, the retrial, there seems to be this reoccurring theme of clips, clips from the prosecution. And when I say clips, I mean like video clips, video clips of Karen Reed's interviews that she did with Dateline, Investigation Discovery, and different news or social media outlets, right? And this is why the prosecution to me is like, I get it. Again, there's a whole rhyme or reason for what the prosecution is doing. Um, they're trying to build up a story. They're trying to not throw everything out at once and overwhelm the jury. They want the jury to remember what they're saying from the beginning and process it and have it play throughout the trial. And so they can feel like they're following better, right? But these clips of these interviews of Karen Reed, um, it's like pulling just what's gonna stick to the wall, like cherry picking clips. So in these clips, they have picked the ones that now are out of context because they have taken these little clips and kind of sprinkled them throughout, right? And these clips make Karen look bad. And I hate to say that, they do. Not to myself, because, well, I can recognize that the clips look bad. I feel I have a pretty good idea of the truth, and so it doesn't really sway my opinion any. Also, knowing the interviews themselves and watching the interviews or hearing the other context with the interviews, I immediately could pick out that these were deliberately made to make Karen Reed look horrible. And to a jury who was told, don't look up the case, you are allowed to go home and research the case. If you're told something about the case, you must know they're going in knowing nothing. So if I was going in knowing nothing, these clips would be like, wow, wow, wow. Um, there's clips in her speaking about hitting John. She wasn't stating she hit John. She was stating, like, asking, posing the question, right? While talking to the interviewer, it was, could I have hit John? Could I have this? Could I have incapacitated him? Could I have knocked him out? Because this woman is trying to make sense of the night. She admittedly, we see on surveillance, and she has admitted herself, she was out drinking that night. She woke up and can't find her boyfriend and now is freaking out, panics, can't get a hold of him. It's a blizzard. There's a number of things that are attributing to her not making sense, frankly, or just questioning every possible thing that could have happened. And to me, I really think that leads more to Karen's innocence. And I say this because if I was guilty of running somebody over, I don't think I would get out and say to first responders or say to interviewers that she knows is going to be public knowledge and be aired across for millions and millions of people to see. I don't think I would say that. I think that's coming from an honest place in her heart. Could I have willing to accept the responsibility that if for a minute she thinks that she's going to take that responsibility and she's going to be accepting of her consequences, that this was a horrible accident. To me, her getting out and saying, could I have hit him, or doing these interviews means she's not guilty. If she was guilty, would someone get out of their car and be like, oh my God, did I hit him? And even put that idea out there for people, or even do an interview where she's allowing herself to be vulnerable, which you can't be vulnerable to social media and these interviewers because they don't care about you. They want to get the story. They want whatever salacious in the media and information they can twist, they can turn your words. I think Karen was coming from an honest place. I think that she thought, if I just tell the truth, what's going to happen? And I think that she overshared. And another example of me thinking sometimes just say it and then let it go. And this is pertaining to one of the clips with the drinking. And again, this is taken out of context because in this interview, she's kind of stating that she believes she's had 9 gin and tonics. They were weak, so then she makes shots of them. She orders shots and then adds it to it, and she's talking to John about how these drinks are this and that, and they're kind of having this discussion about the alcohol and listening to her speak about the bar, how it works, the shots, the drinks, the consumption of drinks. Well, first of all, her consumption of drinks it varies. And so, again, you don't know something bad is going to happen throughout the night. I'm sure she wasn't counting her drinks, what she thought she drank and what she felt safe to drive, and how she felt is on a personal level, I feel. I could take 3 shots and that may have a different effect on me as someone who drinks a lot takes 3 shots, right? So I definitely think that looking at it in that context, just automatically you hear she was drinking and driving, and oh, she thinks she had 9 drinks. So does that mean 9 drinks is really 10 drinks, or does that mean 3 drinks is 4 drinks? And I think as she was trying to recollect and try to figure out, just not by watching the CCTV footage of her at this bar that night, kind of her own, like, how many drinks did I have? Or, yes, I could have had, not realizing again that this was going to bite her in the ass in the end, because now they're taking these clips, and for some reason during this retrial, they're really honing in this drunk driving fact. So all these little clips of her showing drinking, it's just not a good look for her. It's not a good look to jurors who are seeing these clips, jurors who don't understand alcohol consumption and levels. They might not understand, like, where they tested her levels in the early morning and then a few hours later and they were at 0.9, I believe there. Some people don't understand that, yes, the level may be high, but that person could have been perfectly capable of driving a vehicle or functioning when you might have been passed out drunk at the bar. I think that that's something that the jurors can try to understand with scientific evidence or questions concerning it. But as far as appearance, I think that it's not good for Karen. And it just gives the jury a bad taste in their mouth. Imagine she wasn't drunk, right? Or drinking and intoxicated would be the better word, right? Buzzed, as Karen likes to say. Buzzed was what she felt. And I mean, buzzed to me, whether or not you shouldn't be behind the wheel at all drinking. But someone who is buzzed and does this on a regular basis may feel okay or in control of the vehicle. We know that's wrong and she should not have been drinking and driving. But had the alcohol been not a factor in this, like, would they be pushing this narrative so hard of her running him over? Or was the alcohol like their driving motive for this? Or was this almost like a way they were going to, since I'm on the I believe Karen Reed is innocent and being framed by these police, was that enough that they said, oh, this drunk girl, she was at the bar and she was fighting with John and there's a history of it. Blame it on the Karen, blame it on Karen. She's not going to do nothing. We're all cops. We're not going to get in trouble. Um, she was drunk. I mean, not, mind you, that she was drunk with a bunch of police officers that were driving the streets of the community intoxicated, also with Karen Reed. But here's the problem: Karen Reed is the one that is on trial. The other officers, they're not on trial. So, as worse to me as driving drunk as Karen is, we have the police force now engaging in drinking and driving. So, I mean, there's that. But again, the jury, that doesn't matter to the jury, because if you're looking at it as a Karen Reed issue, what did it matter if, the other police officers drank? So I don't know. I think that those clips really, for appearance, did not look good. Now, I am interested to see if the defense, what their comeback is to these. Are they going to have the actual interviews, the full interviews, so they can give the context? I know that they've pulled up the body cam footage from the CPR with Timothy Nettles saying that Karen Reed was screaming, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. So I'm interested to see what the defense's strategy is going to be for those clips. To me, this is a stretch through the prosecution, but a good one, right? Because it's a win for the prosecution. I don't believe it's a win for Karen. Now, we can all be smarter and better humans than that and know that we shouldn't base our decision off of her drinking. But the case now has been really pushed of this drinking narrative, right? And I don't know. No, I don't think she was intoxicated enough that she backed into him. I think that the surveillance footage of her going through the lights and where she's braking and then she's slowing through the intersections, and these were all typical behaviors or practices that Karen used while she was driving, while she was sober. So her driving hasn't changed. Her demeanor is the same. Her and John are kind of going back and forth. I don't know. I don't see how much relevance the alcohol is playing into the bigger fact here. And that's John is dead, and you have a woman sitting on trial that's accused of this death, and a whole police department and people across the United States that believe she's guilty, and she's trying to fight for her life while grieving for John. So, yeah, I would say that this has really, it's crazy to see these trials play out because you just never know what can happen. And I did want to touch on Peggy, John's mom, speaking on the stand about her son and how distraught and how upset, and it's gut wrenching. She has lost her daughter, which the niece and nephew, that is who John is raising, and lost her daughter and then her son in law. And that is the reason why John stepped in to raise his niece and nephew. This woman and this family have suffered gravely. And I just don't know how that much tragedy can affect one family. I do appreciate Alan Jackson not questioning Peggy, to me, there wouldn't be much relevance in this. Um, Kind of no more than to me to get a feel of the situation and life, how it was in the everyday workings of John O'Keefe and Karen and herself and different people. Um, I think that she has suffered enough, and I appreciate that Alan Jackson, after seeing how distraught and hard it was for her to make it through her testimony, said that he was sorry for her loss and he had no further questions. And yes, that could be a strategy to win. Could that been a act from his heart? I don't know. I know that they're lawyers and they come off as sharks and they do things that maybe we find questionable, but to me it came off more like having a heart, reading the room, understanding that what you are going to do is question a victim's mother who is barely functioning. So I think that was a good move on Alan Jackson's behalf. And I hate to put it as a win, but a win or a help with kind of salvaging maybe some of the bad that was portrayed of the clip for Karen. I don't know. It's tough, very, very, very tough. So we'll leave it at that. So yeah, again, it's. I'm sorry, kind of spaced out there for a minute, and it's because at the end of this, we have John O'Keefe who's passed. We have a niece and nephew who looked at John like their father, their parent. They lost their mother. They lost their father. A mother with no son, a father with no son. I I just can't even believe or understand how cruel this world is. And someone was responsible for John's death, and we're missing that. We're missing justice for John. And John is kind of being pushed away through social media and the scrutiny of Karen and the police department. And all this being lost is the people who are actually suffering and dealing with this. And I want to say, even Karen, since John's passing, she lost her partner, she lost the niece and nephew. She's been fighting for her life. Financially, I'm sure this is rough on her. Emotionally, this is hard on her. Just imagine going to the grocery store, the local grocery store, and people think that you killed a police officer, your boyfriend, someone who was a good cop, a good person, as far as we can see. Um, Imagine being known as the one responsible for that when you're not even convicted of it. But in the court of public opinion, people have labeled Karen as a killer. And yes, she has an amazing amount of support. However, I don't know how she handles it. I really don't. And just trying to like scream from the rooftops that she had nothing to do with this. It's it's again tragic on all parties. John's family especially, and Karen. So yeah, absolutely devastating. I'm trying to go through my notes and see if I have anything else that I would like to kind of bring up that I heard was new. And let me look over at my laptop. But yeah, I know that there was talk about the hypothermia and different things about John's body being moved, and that'll be interesting to hear. Um, and again, that phone temperature data, I'm really interested in that as well. Um, and again, this could go either way. We've seen it with the OJ trial, we've seen it with the Casey Anthony trial. Um, and in my opinion, they were both guilty and got off. But we see it the other way. We see people wrongfully convicted sitting in a prison cell. And I can't even imagine the fear that Karen has right now. So I'm going to wrap it up here. And week 2 of the trial starts tomorrow. And I want you guys to leave in the comments, what do you think about what you've seen so far as the prosecution and the defense, and where do you think, just after week 1, where kind of things, or where the jurors' heads are at? And again, we're 1 week in on, is it 6 or 7 weeks, I believe, um, of trial testimonies and evidence being brought forward. So you never know what it will be. And I'm thinking the prosecution is going to need something big. And I'm interested to see, because they felt comfortable to bring her back for a retrial. So we will see. Um, Sending all the love and support to John's family and this absolute tragedy. We are sending support to Karen. Again, this is all alleged. This is my opinion. And I am not a lawyer. So do your own research and watch the trial. Form your opinion and where you stand with things. And I think it would be interesting if you guys leave in the comments below, what are your thoughts? And as the trial goes on, leave a comment below if you think that something came up that really stuck for you, that you found to be kind of a standout moment, right? Because that might be a standout moment for a juror sitting there. So I find it interesting as people interpret different things themselves, and they watch the trial or the interviews. Where do they come with a conclusion as to if Karen Reed is guilty or innocent? So again, I will be back at the end of the week, maybe a midweek check-in to see kind of like if there's anything big. I'll hop on here and we can discuss it. Um, Maybe we go live at some point, and after, like on Wednesday, after we've had 3 days of trial, let's go live. Let's discuss in the comments or on the live what you guys think and what you feel. So, like, comment, and subscribe. And I appreciate all the support. Come follow me on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. I'm trying to get better at um, posting to all platforms. Also, if you guys would like to come and check me out on my second channel, that is Counting Steps with Courtney. That is where I go through my journey of my prosthetic leg. I had a left leg disarticulation due to botched surgeries from bone cancer. It's a long story, and yeah. So if you guys want to watch me on that channel, learn to walk with a prosthetic leg or manage and do different tasks without the prosthetic leg, you can always come subscribe over there if you want something like a little less weighing on the heart, I guess, and a little more uplifting and lighthearted, I guess, instead of being consumed with crime and the evil in the world. So, thanks again for watching, and make sure you guys leave a like and definitely subscribe. Have a good night. Bye.